Lock your dreams at night, 'cause shit could happen to you. Don't count stars or you might stumble. Someone drops a sign, and down, down, down you'll tumble. Keep your eye on spring, run when church bells ring, 'cause it could happen to you. All I did was wonder how this would be, and it happened. Yes, it happened. Oh, 'cause it happened to me. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, that was very enjoyable. I'm Blackjack, B-Jack.
Hello everyone, Dennis Chang. Welcome to another video. By the time you're watching this, I should be in Osaka, Japan. Osaka is in the western part of Japan. Well, actually more in the middle, but it's west of Tokyo. 2 hours by bullet train. And the people there are so much fun. It's a totally different vibe from Tokyo. They also have their own dialect. Mo karimaka, bochi bochi denna. So, as promised, today's video is about why you need to go to jam sessions if you want to get better at jazz guitar or just at music in general. This video is unscripted, but we'll see how it goes. Please subscribe, please comment, please like. It makes such a huge difference. I don't think this video is gonna get a lot of views because the philosophical ones don't tend to get many views. Oh well, but I think it's a fun topic, so I'm doing it anyway. It's my video, I do what I want. I think going to jam sessions or playing gigs or playing with other people in general is very important because it develops a different set of skills as opposed to practicing at home. Skills that you can't really, I don't think anyway, develop if you are just playing alone. So I'm going to list a number of reasons why it's super, super important. First of all, when you play at home, you tend to be a little bit more relaxed. And you may have noticed that you maybe play better than if you were on stage or even recording. Have you guys noticed that sometimes if you try to record something, you were practicing before the recording and it sounded so good that suddenly you're recording, something happens, maybe you become so hyper aware, maybe it's a psychological factor and it affects your performance level. And yes, I think a lot of it is psychological, and this kind of the nerves, even if you don't really actually feel outright nervous, it just affects you. A lot of external factors bring your level down, and it's something that I've noticed because a lot of you know that have worked because of DC Music School. I work with a lot of like really great players, and sometimes they're in my living room just chilling with the guitar and playing way better than I've ever heard them elsewhere before. I remember like the first time I met Stokolo when I was working with Stokolo Rosenberg. He was in my living room, and he just started warming up and playing all these things that I had never really heard him play before, and way better than he sounded when he played live or on recordings, surprisingly. And I think that's that phenomenon. I think when we're at home, we can play to, let's say, 100% of our ability, but when we're on stage, our level is drastically reduced. I'm making up these numbers, but maybe 60 to 85% of our true ability, depending on whether we're warmed up or not. I noticed that, for example, when I do a concert in the beginning, the technical stuff is a little bit harder, often because I'm not warmed up. I don't tend to really warm up before I play. Maybe I should, who knows. But by the second set, usually things are a little bit better. My mind is also clear. I'm more at ease. So I'm close to that 80%. So if you find that you're on stage and you completely fold, what that means is that at home, you need to be able to nail it so hard that when you're on stage and your level, let's say, drops to 60%, you can still nail it. So basically, at 60%, being able to nail something at 60% of your true ability means that your true ability needs to be freakishly high, that at 60% of ability, you're still able to do whatever it is you're trying to do. And I noticed that to be very true with a lot of players. I've seen that a lot, even when I was teaching. When I used to teach, students would say, "Oh, I don't know why I can't do it right now. I was able to do it at home." And I believe them. They were probably able to do it at home, but not always perfect. And sometimes, like, maybe 1 out of 3 or 4 times they're able to kind of get it. So that 100% level, when brought down to 60%, means they're gonna fold. What it is that they need to practice it so well at home that maybe able to do it like 5 times in a row without making a mistake, and don't really have to think, that when they show up to the lesson, they can do the same thing. So that's super important. So that's one of the main reasons. And then there's another reason. At home, we tend to be in a controlled environment, especially when we practice with backing tracks. We get used to the backing tracks, or even worse is if you use like the iReal Pro or Band in a Box, where you can see you're using the play-alongs from those apps. You can see the chords 1, 2, 3, 4, next bar 1, 2, 3, 4 being displayed as you play, and you're looking at it, and it's like a bit of a training wheel, so to speak. Whereas when you're on stage playing with other musicians, different things can happen. You practice at home expecting it to be one way, but on stage, because of the external factors, the people that you're playing with, let's say you at home you play the backing track, a swing tune, and the bass player was always walking, and the drummer was doing like playing with brushes. And then you're on stage, and the drummer is like doing ding ding a ding or a different pattern, and the bass player is not playing two field while it's playing a different field. What did I say earlier? Like walking bass, and then suddenly you're live. The bass player is playing in two field. It's a completely different feeling, and therefore you might feel a little bit flustered, and you're not in your element anymore. And this is the importance of jam sessions, playing with musicians who will do things that you might not necessarily expect them to do, but be able to deal with it. Now, I come from a spoiled style of music, swing and gypsy jazz, where the good players abide by a certain set of rules where the tempo is the king. Like, there's such a tremendous emphasis on support in that style of music. I would argue that this emphasis exists in all styles of music, but nowadays, if you saw my video from last week, there's this culture where people say jazz should be free, like you do whatever you want, you put all the accents in all the weird spots, and I have to acknowledge that that exists, and I also have to acknowledge that there's some people who really want things to be that way. In my personal experience, the players that I personally respect wouldn't want things that way. They would more like things to be the way I want them to be, which is paying really careful attention to the cooperation of the band, making sure like everyone is, the soloist is well supported. But I digress. When you go to jam sessions, you might realize that people are not playing the way you were hoping they would play. And then what are you going to do? You have to adapt. You have to learn to play with such players. I'm so spoiled from coming from that older style, that mentality, that in the beginning when I experienced players not playing the way I wanted to be, I was a little bit bitter, quite sour, because all these players doing random things. And while I would say it was their fault, not mine, I would also say that partially also my fault. Partially in the sense that, you know what, I'm in this situation, I need to learn how to adapt. I can't always expect things to be the way I want them to be, and therefore I have to adapt. So I progressed tremendously, believe it or not, by playing with really, really bad musicians. I went to so many jam sessions playing with really, really, really bad rhythm sections, to the point where, well, not totally 100% there, I'm a lot more comfortable than I used to be. And I'm feeling more confident about it playing with really, really bad rhythm sections. Don't get me wrong, it's not pleasant at all. It's really, really not pleasant. But I can, depending on the circumstances, for the most part, survive. I remember I went to this jam session in Tokyo, the most famous jam session. Now, this jam session, like I said, a healthy musical environment has two things, is varied. You'll have people who are learning, you have bad musicians, and you have really, really good musicians. That's a healthy musical environment. So in this session, anything goes. Sometimes you get the really, really good players, and sometimes you get the really, really bad players, and everything in between. And I often go with my friend Tim from France. Salut, Timothée. Anyway, we have this thing where we kind of like make fun of each other. Like we go there and we tell each other we're playing the lottery. Who's gonna get lucky at the lottery today? Who's not gonna be lucky? And we always make fun of each other when we're on stage with the bad musicians. Then karma hits us, because then after we're paired with the bad musicians. So this one time, I think it was Take the A Train. My goodness. The only one that was more or less stable, like kind of more or less stable, was the drummer. Kind of. Everyone else was just chaos. Like there was like another guitar player. I think the way I don't have this on record, but I think that guitar player might have been one or two beats behind or ahead. So playing harmonies in super weird spots. Bass player, I remember, didn't know the song, so I had to look at the iReal Pro and just like struggling. And the piano player putting all sorts of substitutions everywhere, and I had to solo over that. You know what? I survived. I can't say that it was a good solo, but I was actually play from beginning to end without making a single mistake. And my friend was so impressed. He's like, wow, that was insane. One of the best solos I've ever heard, in the sense that given the situation, most people would want to shoot themselves, but I survived it. And those are skills that you develop by going to jam sessions all the time, by being in situations where you play with musicians that will do things that you don't expect them to do, and then you adapt. I remember I played a gig with a pretty famous player at a festival with a pickup band in another country, and that pickup band, unfortunately, well, it's not that they were not talented, but they didn't know how to play the music we were supposed to play, and so it was like rhythmic issues. And I noticed that this famous player just plowed through things, actually played really fantastic in my opinion. And I when I went back home to my country, I talked to common friends, and my friend said, "Yeah, it's true. This musician has the ability to play over anything, but at the same time, shouldn't music be about playing together?" And yeah, I think it should be. But still, I was just very, very, very impressed that, in all hell breaks loose, you can still survive. On the other hand, I do know I have some friends who refuse to go to jam sessions because they want things to be the way they're used to. And therefore, they never developed these survival skills. And fair enough, you choose what you want to do. Um, but me personally, I told myself, all right, I need to develop these skills. I'm gonna go to these sessions and just learn how to do this. This is something that you can only learn when you're on stage. So that's one really big thing. Being able to play with bad musicians can do wonders for your musicianship. It can also make you go insane, so be careful. But then, that's kind of one extreme. The other extreme is playing with really, really good musicians, which also happens. Sometimes I get to play with really, really great musicians, and I learn a lot by being with them, by playing with them, by listening to them, listening to what they do, what they don't do, why they do it, how they do it, everything. I learn so much that way through osmosis. I talk a lot about this in many of my previous videos, so I highly recommend that. And also, not just necessarily sessions, but even gigs. But let's just say sessions. Most of the time when I go to sessions, I let other people choose the song. And then if I don't know it, maybe actually I will read it, just pull it out, or try to depending on what the song is, maybe I can learn it really, really quick just by listening. It depends on the song, right? And every week I would go to the sessions, and if a song that I didn't know previously gets called again, now I know it. Or maybe I don't know it as well because it's still new, but every week if it gets played, then I suddenly know it. And a lot of my repertoire was developed in this way. When I first started playing gypsy jazz, I had this regular cafe gig twice a week for a number of years. And I learned so much repertoire from doing this gig because we played the same song over and over and over. Maybe we started with like 30 or 40 songs, and we had to choose like 15 from those 30 or 40 songs. And so we could do 2 gigs without repeating the repertoire. And we did this for months, and then after, we got bored, we added songs. So like I learned a lot of songs in this way. And if you watch many of my previous videos, learning songs is such an important thing because, well, I'm not going to get into that in this video because there are so many reasons for that. It'll make this video longer. And it's the same thing with jam sessions. I learned tons and tons of songs in this way that are now committed to memory. I also discover new songs this way. It's like sometimes someone will call something, oh, I never heard this tune before, or I've heard of this tune but I never learned it, then I'll go home and I'll learn it. So going to jam sessions is great for that. Or just gigs in general, playing regular gigs, especially if you're playing the repertoire over and over again with, again, like I said, like my gypsy jazz thing, with variations every now and then, it does wonders for you. It's kind of a natural way of learning, and you're just gonna reinforce that knowledge that you already have. It's just gonna be part of you. There are lots of songs that I just cannot forget because I play them so much. And actually, Pat Martino told me this story about when he was just a kid, a teenager. He used to do these gigs every single night, playing almost the same repertoire. And actually, maybe some of you don't know this, is that after his aneurysm, he lost a lot of his memory, right? And what it was, the way he describes it, he didn't actually learn how to play the guitar from scratch. What it was like, if you were to give him, in his own, I'm paraphrasing, but if you were to give him a fork, he would know that you could eat food with it. And the same thing with the guitar. If you give him a guitar, he could do stuff with it. It's just that he didn't know what to play. So when he says he had to relearn the guitar, it means he had to relearn the music, but actually the technical ability and all that stuff was still there. And the aneurysm, the operation, the successful operation, affected his, I guess, is a short-term memory. Yeah, short-term memory. It made it very hard for him to memorize songs and at least put them in the short-term memory and store them in the short-term memory. So even for his compositions, he often had, when he would play live, sometimes you can't see, but put it like down there where it's kind of discreet, he'd had charts for every single song. But when I was recording with him for DC Music School, he did the charts for a number of standards that he had played before. But there were certain songs, like Wes Montgomery songs, where he just knew it by heart. I think he might have spent so much time with Wes Montgomery records that it's just in there. So that's the same for me with a lot of standards. Play them so much, I just can't forget them. They're just a part of me. And when they're a part of you, you can concentrate on other things, like interaction, looking around you, being aware of what's going on. So that's a huge thing about the going to jam sessions or playing regular gigs. Another thing that's not necessarily quote unquote directly musically related, but it's networking, meeting people, becoming friends with people, and then people you can work with in the future. I met a lot of wonderful people through jam sessions, friends even. Sometimes we don't play music, we just hang out, and I think personally that affects my musicianship as well. Getting to know them, their life stories and all that stuff. It's very, very interesting. So going to jam sessions, playing regular gigs, meeting up with friends and playing, it's very useful in that sense. So that's today's video. Next week's video, I'm going to talk to you about why you should avoid going to jam sessions, why you should avoid playing with people, why you should avoid playing gigs if you really want to get better. There are very valid reasons. And at the end of that video, I'm going to summarize what the actual lesson to be learned from all this. There is something. Stay tuned.